The following talk is offered freely to ensure that no one is ever denied access to these practices and to these teachings. If you feel inspired to make a donation to support this offering, you can go to my website at jonathanfoust.com. While you're there, you can also sign up for a monthly newsletter designed to support you in your practice. Thank you, and enjoy.
In the community where I lived for many years, the ashram where I lived, we had these isolation tanks. And if you're not familiar with what an isolation tank is, it's a gigantic plastic cylinder filled with water. And the water has about, I think it's 70 pounds of Epsom salt in it, so it's super, super saline. And it's heated to body temperature, and it's soundproofed, and it doesn't let in any light. So what you do is you lie in the water, and you float really high in the water, and it's a sensory deprivation tank. So you can't hear anything, you can't see anything, because the water is body temperature. You kind of feel like a little brain floating in a solution, after a while. So it was really big in consciousness studies, and we had 2 of them in our ashram. So we also did a technique, and I've led this technique a lot. I still lead retreats of kind of a very powerful form of breathing that can really produce a very, very powerful. You breathe very intensely for an hour, and all kinds of interesting things can happen. So there was one of our benefactors of our ashram. His name was Dick Bertram. He was this. Rumor was he was the first Marlboro man. He was a really super rugged, handsome guy, and his family they made yachts down in Florida, and he would come up and do all these programs and just love the community and gave us a lot of support. But he really got into the breathing, and it was became something I was really, really interested in. So he asked me if I would be interested in doing the breath work with him in the isolation tank. And I thought, well, sure. And so I went up to the room where the isolation tank was, and I remember that the guru's son was also there, so he invited him as well. And so I had this very interesting thought when I'm lying in the tank next to Malai, this other guy, and here's this 87-year-old guy in a Speedo closing a hatch, coming, on the isolation tank. And I remember thinking, I have done a lot of things in the name of spiritual practice, but I think this is the weirdest. So the title of this talk is The Best Technique. And I'll give you one answer at the beginning and then the other one at the end. The classic response, because of course many people, remember someone asked the guru in the community where I lived, if I'm gonna learn meditation, I don't want to mess around, so what's the best technique? He sat there and he waited, and the guru paused dramatically, and he said, the best technique is the one you do on a regular basis. There's actually a lot of wisdom in that. Whatever technique you're drawn to, do it on a regular basis, because it's guaranteed it's going to open up into something else. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what it means for you to find the best technique, because it really is an individual exploration. And tonight I'd like to talk about 3 different categories of techniques. There's the technique of gathering your attention in one place. And then there are the techniques that are associated around clear seeing and liberation. And then there are the techniques that are about developing your capacity to let go and let be or surrender. It's so interesting how, think back not that long ago, maybe just a generation or two back, that if you had any inclination towards a spiritual tradition or spirituality, you would pretty much be stuck with whoever was in your local area. So if you were in a village, it would be whatever the tradition was in that village, or someone you knew who knew something, and that's what you would train in. For me, when I was 15, I literally stumbled into transcendental meditation, mantra meditation. And it was a total connect for me. The lights came on. I did it very intensively for about 15 years. And I wasn't interested in any other techniques. I didn't really even know there were other techniques. I was just doing meditation. And it was satisfying me, so I really wasn't that curious about other techniques that were out there. And what's so interesting in contrast to that now, if you're interested in meditation and you go online, oh my God, as someone said, now there are these secret teachings that were reserved for only the most dedicated monastics that are now available as a free PDF download. It's crazy. It's just crazy. And so all of these rich traditions are out there, and it can be enormously confusing. And it's interesting when you think about your practice of meditation. Obviously, it's a priority for you because you're here. What are the techniques that have resonated for you? What are the different experiences you had that just lit something up where you thought there's more here? And I love that part of the practice. So there are all these different traditions out there, and I ran across this headline that said it was about weighted blankets. It says weighted blankets are sure to succeed where CBD oil, salt lamps, oil diffusers, acupressure, bath bombs, and white noise machines failed. There's so many options. And there's nothing more wild than looking at all the different diets that are out there, all the different nutritional strategies that are going on out there. Vegetarian, keto, raw food, living food, standard American, Pritikin, Zone, blood type, Atkins, paleo, Ayurvedic, juice diets, mono diets, plant-based diets, low-carb diets, and now, of course, intermittent fasting. And what I've always found so interesting is I've always been very, very interested in diet and consciousness and nutrition. It's been an area of fascination for me. But I noticed that there was one particular diet that was, you only do juices, and had this whole regime laid out. And as I was kind of reading the book, I thought, oh my God, this worked for him, and now he's declaring that this is going to work for everybody. And that's kind of how it works. Someone has an insight, and then they write a book or they broadcast it as if it's the answer, and then many of us, we go chasing it. And the truth is, we need to find our own path. As the Buddha said, finding your dharma is your dharma. Finding your path is your path. And I think it's really important for each of us to explore different forms of practice, because different disciplines correlate to different personality structures and different mental types and so forth. And that's why in yoga, the word yoga means union. It's kind of the yoke that creates wholeness. how there's not just one path of yoga, but there are many paths of yoga that are really quite well developed. One of them is karma yoga, which is using service as a vehicle for waking up, selfless service. So you take your life is expressed through your actions, and so you align your actions that really contribute and support others, and you literally lose yourself in serving others. The word seva means selfless service. Bhakti yoga is the yoga of devotion, and that's where you have something that for you represents the divine, and you just lose yourself in devotion. Very, very powerful. And of course, it's not just yoga. We see it in different spiritual traditions. All have kind of a branch that's all focused on the heart and devotion. And then there's Raja Yoga, which is around sort of self-development and meditation. It really works on purification and refining your consciousness. And Jnana Yoga is the yoga of the mind and the will. So that's for those who love to study and read books and really look and contemplate what is true. It's about blowing the mind through the mind. So those are the main branches of yoga, and again, they correspond to different types. And I think it's helpful to kind of explore them all. And I always get a kick out of the traditions that say that they are the best. And there are a lot out there. There are many, many different people and traditions that are very, very happy to tell you what you should be practicing. But the real calling is for you to discern for yourself what lights you up. To be a lamp unto yourself. That's the real practice. But a lot of traditions draw on this practice of gathering or concentration, taking the ADD mind and bringing it into the present moment. It's so foundational across many, many different traditions. I remember back when I learned, mantra meditation, I was really, really into it, and we kind of coerced my father into trying it, and he tried it and dropped it pretty immediately. And he said, it doesn't work for me. I can't stay focused on the mantra. And it's kind of a shame that he didn't stay with it, because it's not about just staying with the breath. It's not about just staying with your point of concentration, because it's very, very challenging to expect the mind to be able to do that. But of course, in the training, you're cultivating calm. You're really, literally shifting your nervous system when you take the time to cultivate one-pointed concentration. And so lots of different traditions use concentration, whether it's the breath or a mantra or staring at a candle or contemplating scripture as a point of concentration. Let me read you a little bit of a translation of the primary instruction that the Buddha gave to the monks as he would send them off. They would have, during the rainy season, they would have a retreat for 3 months. And then when the rains would stop, he would send them out to do their practice. So if you like, you can close your eyes, and I'll just read you this, and you can kind of get a sense of. The language is a little bit stilted. And of course, all this is using he, so I'm going to substitute she. And as a precursor to this, the Buddha spoke about how the body is the primary vehicle for transformation. How does a monk remain focused on the body in and of itself? The monk goes into the wilderness, to the shade of a tree, or to an empty building, sits down, folding her legs crosswise, holding her body erect, and setting mindfulness to the fore. Always mindful, she breathes in. Mindful, she breathes out. Breathing in long, she discerns, I am breathing in long. Or breathing out long, she discerns, I am breathing out long. Or breathing in short, she discerns, I am breathing in short. She trains herself, I will breathe in, sensitive to the entire body. She trains herself, I will breathe out, sensitive to the entire body. She trains herself, I will breathe in, calming the body, and trains herself, I will breathe out, calming the body. And just as a dexterous turner or his apprentice, when making a long turn, discerns, I am making a long turn, or when making a short turn, discerns, I am making a short turn. In the same way, the monk, when breathing in long, discerns, I am breathing in long. I am calming the body. In this way, she remains focused internally on the body in and of itself. She remains focused on the phenomena of origination. She remains mindful in regard to the body on phenomena passing away. This is how a monk remains focused on the body in and of itself. So you might sense just for a moment, and again, I love this instruction, when you feel the breath, can you compare the length of this natural breath in relationship to the breath before? And can you sense how this calms, draws your awareness into deeper absorption? And if you like, you can deepen your breath. And if you like, you can open your eyes. Pema Chodron tells the story of when she was first learning meditation. This is in the Shambhala tradition. And her teacher said, okay, well, let me give you the instructions. You close your eyes and kind of relax your body and notice the movement of the breath on the inside. So she went off and did that. And then she came back in the afternoon. She said, okay, I think I'm ready for the next level of instruction. And the teacher smiled and said, okay, here it comes. Relax your body. And notice the movement of the breath on the inside. That's it. How could that be? It is so utterly simple. And yet you may have sensed just in those few minutes that when you can begin to create that sense of concentration, that there is this moving inward of awareness. The mind, which is so focused out there, over time begins to become more and more aware of the inner world. And in that calming, there's some very profound things going on. So concentration and gathering is just such a critical part of the practice. And again, it can be on your breath, it can be on sound, it can be walking as you're walking, being aware of washing the dishes as you're washing the dishes. It can also be, again, different techniques have you focus on different things. Some focus specifically on the nostrils, some on the belly. But essentially, it's about choosing one thing and training your attention on it, coming back to it again and again and again. And of course, as I've talked about in the past, if you really focus on this particular technique, it can bring you into very, very profound internal states, different levels of concentration that are different, truly phenomenal states, when you can really experience some very interesting phenomena that arise. But an interesting thing about concentration is that you can get very, very concentrated, but it doesn't have a lot to do with happiness. It doesn't have a lot to do with really seeing clearly. And so there are other techniques that help you to do that. Recently, a woman was telling me how she would always insist her family would go on vacation to this place where she would go when she was a little girl and growing up. It was kind of like her family tradition to go to this particular place. It was in the mountains, and it was kind of a beautiful place. And she kind of kept agitating for her family that she should really buy a second home there, because she loved it so much. But as the kids were growing up, she was getting feedback that the kids really didn't like it that much. They didn't really kind of feel that connection. Her husband was a little bored with the place as well, and it became a real point of contention. So they started bargaining, and they would go other places, on vacation. And but she always wanted to kind of go back there. And so she really pushed the point, and kids were just old enough where they could just say, "We hate it there. We don't want to go." And she was so hurt and really, really disappointed. And so as we were talking about where the hurt was, she began to realize that she had a huge amount of nostalgia for this place. She was holding on to her memories, her old boyfriends that she met and knew there, kind of her whole family history. And she was able to see where the clench was, where she was holding on. And with time, she was able to kind of let go of that a little bit. And when she saw how painful it was for her to be holding on to these memories and a direct conflict with her family, she was able to begin to let go a little bit. And actually, she began to feel how freeing it was. While there were a lot of pleasant memories, there were also kind of unpleasant memories there. And turning away from that really allowed her to be with her family and opened up a huge space in their family. What this points toward is the recognition that anywhere you feel stress in your life, anywhere you feel any tension in your life, there's something you're holding on to. There's something you can't let go of. And this is where mindfulness or non-judging awareness becomes an amazing tool. When you can begin to really sense, what am I holding on to? What am I wanting here that's not happening? The capacity to recognize that and investigate that is truly a power that helps you to let go of what's holding you back in your life. So we have the practice of RAIN, the acronym of RAIN. If you're not familiar with that, is to recognize or realize what's happening. And then the A is to sense if you can allow it or accept it, and sometimes you can't. But if you can, it allows you to turn toward the I, which is to investigate. To really look closely at what is this? What is really happening here? Can you kind of sense what's below the tension, or what are you believing about this? What does it feel like on the inside? It's your capacity to have tea with your demons, the end part of that equation is a critical part of this practice. The end stands for nurturing what you find with loving awareness. So just as this woman was able to kind of see her discomfort and the fighting and her tension with her family, she was able to turn toward the discomfort and really look at it, to really investigate it, to bring some empathy and compassion to it, and felt a little bit more free. So there are absolutely times in our lives when concentration and arriving is very, very helpful. It creates a steadiness and a resilience. It sharpens your attention to recognize what is there. But then there are times in your life when you're caught, when you're in physical pain or emotional turbulence or mental agitation, when the techniques of investigation are so helpful. What am I experiencing right now? Can I make room for it? What does it really feel like on the inside? What am I believing about myself? What am I holding on to? And could I let it go? Could I call on some form of loving awareness, so kindness or compassion? What does that feel like inside? So one element of meditation, another school of technique, if you will, is your capacity to look closely at what is here. One kind of informal translation of Vipassana or insight meditation that I like is cultivating penetrating insights into the nature of reality. Concentration is a platform, but then when you really, really look closely, you begin to recognize that everything is changing, and anything you are resisting, it results in some form of stress or some form of rope burn. And you have the capacity to let it go. So another form of practice is the practice of letting things be. The practice of surrender, if you will. So I once did a very, very intensive training way back when. And this particular teacher who was from India was teaching us different pranayama techniques, different breathing techniques. And we were doing breathing techniques with different mudras. So you would breathe with doing different positions of your hands and kind of building all kinds of weird energy experiences. It was a lot of fun. But then we learned all these techniques, but then we did a retreat. It was so good. He started off the retreat, and he said, for this retreat, I want you to do nothing. It was the most confusing instruction I ever heard in my life. And he really wouldn't say any more. So we sat there for 3 days. He said, I want you to do nothing. So I remember sitting there, and we were in these grids. I remember very clearly sitting there, looking out of the corner of my eye, and I'm thinking, I wonder if I'm doing nothing better than she's doing nothing. And I have to say, that was one of the most powerful retreats I've ever done in my life. What does it mean to do nothing? There's a beautiful line in Japanese poetry that says, spring comes and the grass grows by itself. So there are different traditions and different schools that are all about this art of being, the art of simply resting in presence. It's pretty amazing. Let's just do a little bit on this, if you like. So there are a couple portals that can be really helpful, and I think for me, and I think for many people, one of the best portals for exploring this is through sound. So if you like, you can close your eyes, and you might begin to turn your attention to the sound vibrations. And as you do so, sense if you can notice not only the sounds that are the closest to you, but at the sounds that are at the very furthest edge of your capacity to hear. There are two primary ways we listen. One is the traditional way, screening it through the mind, where your mind will automatically locate the sound, give it a name, determine its location, and then ascertain whether it's a threat or not. The other form of practice is referred to as bare attention, and that is you are listening without a past or a future, without any labels, but tuning into the vibrations themselves. You'll notice that you cannot hear better by trying harder. But the practice is to deeply relax and let the sounds be exactly as they are. And we'll take one more minute, and I'll add one little more piece. Can you experience the sounds as they are? And imagine the silence behind the sounds. Now you may notice how the sounds are completely beyond your control. You may notice that if you don't resist the sounds but allow them to be as they are, that there can be a sense of deep spaciousness and allowing. And you might imagine if just for a moment that who you are is the space that contains the sounds. You might now gently deepen the breath. If you like, you can remain with the eyes closed, or if you'd like, you can open your eyes. So this set of techniques is all about guiding you to rest in presence, to sense what it's like to be without desire, to simply let things be as they are. Different schools, or different doorways, or different traditions that point you toward this very, very delicate sense of just being here. One of my favorite Tibetan readings basically says that the reason you experience stress or suffering is simply because you're trying. You're looking for something that's already here. And what you're looking for is closer than you can imagine and easier than you can imagine. It's all about resting in presence. So what the heck is the best technique? When you look at the practices of gathering, and the practices of investigation and clear seeing, and the practices of surrender. The first answer, whatever you're doing on a regular basis, that's the best technique. There's so much truth to that. Because no matter where you start, it will organically take you wherever you need to go in your exploration. But the other answer is a little bit more sophisticated. And I really think what it comes down to is recognizing that spiritual practice, if you will, we'll just use that term, is really a practice of self-awareness and self-diagnosis. It's recognizing what is happening right now and how does this moment need me to be with it. When your mind is scattered, when you've got 100 ideas but you can't focus on one, when you're just reacting to life, you may find that your self-diagnosis will be, I need to get it together. And you may find doing some one-pointed practice will take that scattered, restless mind and bring it back home. And you'll cultivate steadiness and resilience that will allow you to kind of ride all the waves and challenges of your life. You may find in self-awareness and self-diagnosis that you're overcome with some physical pain or some really strong emotional turbulence, or your mind is just fixating on something. You can't get it off the hamster wheel. And there you may find the practice of investigation to be exactly what you need. What is happening? Can I make room for it right now? Where do I feel it? What am I believing? What's true? What am I holding on to? What if I were to let go a little bit? What if I were to call on some form of kindness or compassion? How does it move? How does it shift? Essentially, what am I holding on to and how can I let it go? On the other hand, you may find that there are times when you're feeling very, very present and very, very relaxed and your mind is not disturbed. You may find the best technique is to simply sit back. Just rest in presence. Explore what it's like to be without desire. And open up to the mystery that unfolds through that. So the best technique very well may be the one that arises when you ask yourself, how does this moment want me to be with it? So I'd like to close with a little guidance from Ajahn Chah, who was one of the main inspirations around mindfulness or vipassana meditation, Jack Kornfield's teacher. And we'll close with this, with a short little meditation. So if you'd like, you can close your eyes. So here, Ajahn Chah, who he really teaches a lot around concentration, but also investigation. talks a little bit more about this letting be practice. Whatever arises in the mind, watch it and let go of it. Don't even wish to be rid of thoughts. Then the mind will return to its natural state. No discriminating between good and bad, hot and cold, fast and slow. No me and no you. No self. Just what there is. When you walk, there is no need to do anything special. Simply walk and see what is there. No need to cling to isolation or seclusion. Wherever you are, know yourself by being natural and watching. If doubts arise, watch them come and watch them go. It's very simple. Hold on to nothing. It's as though you're walking down a road. Periodically, you will run into obstacles. When you meet them, just see them and let them go. Don't think about the obstacles you've already passed. Don't worry about those you've not yet seen. Stick to the present. Everything is changing. Whatever you pass, don't cling to it. Eventually the mind will reach its natural balance where practice is automatic. All things will come and go of themselves. And you might just sense in these final moments, how does this moment want you to be with it right now? As you're ready, you can lengthen your breath. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you for your time and attention. I would say before we end that, I'd say one universal truth that's transcendent of all religions, all techniques, is that any meditation or spiritual practice is best ended with a cookie. So I saw the cookie cart go by. So do enjoy your practice, and thank you again.